Anyway, to follow, Carol's a great person to follow for the presentation that I'm making. Being an operator and a rancher and working with agencies and with public lands and all of that, it's an absolute pleasure to work with people like Carol Evans. My hat is off to her because of her and her work and her can-do attitude, which is what she has. It's never a can't-do. We have been able to embark upon a lot of the things that we have embarked on. She's been that person you could look at and say, okay, she's my go-to person. Even though she isn't in our district, I still admire her tremendously. The other person in that, you saw Pat banging his head against the wall. He was involved in our team from the very beginning. And one of the first, and again, another incredible person for riparian habitat and fishery. He was a fisheries biologist mainly. But one of the things when we first started, Pat said, I have never seen grazing and healthy riparians go hand in hand. He was very much a naysayer in this project that we embarked upon. He stuck with it. He was part of our team and still is, even in retirement. And some of these pictures that I'm going to be showing you are due to Pat, through Pat's years of work and having these points that they take pictures on. So, to begin with, we have a ranch in the northeast corner of the state of Nevada, on the east side of the Jarbidge Wilderness. I end up coming out and doing most of the speaking because I guess have a knack to bullshit. But this project is not just me by a long ways. It's my family, it's the people that work there, both present and past. It's agency people, it's university people. This has been a work in progress of a lot of people. And that work in progress is definitely applies to this project too. So anyway, this just gives you an idea of what the place looks like. The Jarbidge Mountains, this is the ranch right here, the private property. We have little narrow riparians in places. We have mountain meadows. It's a real variety of landscape. Runs from about this level here is right down the rolling hills around the ranch. The ranch sits at 6,200 feet. You get up here into the higher elevations. We're grazing up close to 10,000 feet on some of our higher forest. So, years ago, this country was extremely, at the end of the 1800s and early 1900s, there was an awful lot of sheep and cattle grazing in this country. It had some extreme overgrazing in those years. So an awful lot of what we see now, like when my dad, he said, it always looked like this. Well, that is true. It has always looked like that in his lifetime. A lot of this stuff that we're looking at happened a long time ago. So, and again, it was season-long grazing. We'd turn the cattle out in April or so and bring them in October. Sort of typical. A number in 95, we started following or looking at, Alan Savory came to Elko, made a talk, and we looked at that and we were in a very dire situation. Financially, cattle numbers were getting cut more and more. It was basically looking like we were going to be out of the cattle business. They were going to fence all of the streams and all of that. So when Savory came to town and we listened to him, it was sort of a light bulb went off. And of course, all of us being from Missouri, we went, well, that really sounds good, but do you suppose it can really work up here? So what we did is we put the ranch up as an experimental project and formed a team. We asked anybody that would like to come and be involved in managing this area to join our team, and we had about 50 people join. And we still have about 30 people that meet. We meet 3 times a year. It is absolutely critical to what we're doing. The team, of course, can't make final decisions on public land, BLM or forest, but we're all at the round table, we're all working together, we talk about a plan, we talk about what went good, what went wrong, and it just, I would never go back to the old way of doing things. It has been an incredible journey of working just more minds. We've come up with some really very innovative solutions to some things. Lots of things haven't worked all the time, but at least we're all still at the table. There's been some very heated discussions, but we're all still there, and and we're actually have built such a tremendous amount of trust with each other that it's absolutely a pleasure to, most meetings people sort of dread going to. It's fun to go into these meetings and watch everybody smiling and hugging and greeting each other and wondering how things have been going. Okay, so this is our ranch. This is Cottonwood Ranch in total. This is the private down here. This is our BLM around us, and this is the Forest Service up here. What we've done through the years, these are not, we designate these areas for our management purposes. They are not fenced off different areas. Some of these are just natural boundaries. Now there are definitely some fences involved in this, some big pastures, and we've used some electric fence through the years to divide, to make other divisions, but it's mostly for a management tool so that we can keep track of our grazing. And then this is how we sort of keep track of it. Those pastures are over here. The years are over here. We put the number when we were in each pasture, and that way, because when we first started, I was trying to keep this in my mind, and it just didn't work very well. Or on my little notebook that it fell in the creek or whatever. But anyway, this works really well in the planning process now. We can sit at the meetings and we can go, okay, because what we really, really try to do is to change up our grazing so that we're not grazing in the same place at the same time of year, year after year. One of the messages that I want to bring to this today is that, you can have extremely healthy riparians and have grazing at higher levels than what we used to have. When we first started this project, we were down to probably about 300 head total that we were grazing on this whole ranch. And this is about 18,000 acres up here, and this is about 18,000. It's about half and half BLM, and the private's about 1,500 acres. So we were down to about 300 head on all of this. One of the first things that happened when we put this into experimental status is that we tripled the number of cattle that were on the place in order to help pay for the extra management that it was going to take to be involved in this. And one of the main focuses of that extra management is a rider. We use riders all the time. Again, it's one of our biggest challenges, getting a handle on these cattle and being able to actually have them do what you want them to do. But it's like any tool. If you know how to use it, it can be a tremendous tool. It can be a tremendous advantage. If you don't, you really can't use it to its full effect. So the jury's still out. We're still really working at trying to place cattle and have them stay. But we do have a rider out there a lot with the electric fences and the different things. We are able to get a much better handle on the cattle than we used to have. So, okay, I heard this statement once that cattle, all of a sudden, the thought of cattle as users and potentially abusers of the land, and then all of a sudden now looking at them as rehabilitators of the land. That was a real changing moment for me in my life, because I'd almost bought in, because I'd seen these creeks look like this all my life, and I was basically buying into the thought that maybe cattle inherently aren't good for the land. So once we started on this and we saw what can happen, it has been an exciting journey, and it has started. I thought I knew the land. I've been raised, I was a year old when they moved onto this ranch, and you know, I've ridden every corner of it. I felt like I knew it like the back of my hand, but I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what was growing on the ground or what was under the ground, and how interrelated they all are, how connected they all are, and what you do with one interacts with all of the others, and you've got to pay attention to all of that. And it's very complicated, but it's complicated and it's simple all at the same time, because I know for me, I always thought it was so complicated that there's no way I could ever do anything about this. This is science. This is things that other scientists can do. But you just got to, it's like that pond, that little stone in the pond. You just, okay, you can do you can do this, so do that, and then see what it produces, and just go forward that way. And you learn in the process, learn tremendous amounts in the process. So, okay, I'm going to go through a series of pictures now that just sort of show what it looked like and what it looks like now. This is South Fork of Cottonwood, sort of one of our high flow streams. You can see this back here was with about 300 head grazing year round. This here is with about 800 head grazing it for about 2 weeks. So I guess just another view of the stream looking down and the changes that have happened. Now this, I got these wrong when I was switching them around. So actually this is just taken this year on 2014, and it belongs with this series back here. It belongs right here. So anyway, so in 2000 we had a fire came across our land, burned about a third of it, about 11,000 acres. And then in 2008, the mountain burnt, our first forest permit burnt. So we've definitely had fire involved in all of this. This is sort of what it looked like in 96, this Goat Creek Flat. This is what it looked like after the burn in 2000. Everybody's seen, this is 2008. A lot of rabbit brush. This is after it's been grazed. And I don't have a new picture of it. So again, Goat Creek, same thing before the fire. After the fire, starting to come back, 2005, and I wished I had one now. These willows now are about 8 feet tall. So this is a pretty dramatic spot for me that I was lucky to take pictures of. Okay, so this is up on our forest, very narrow riparian area. Keep in mind this creek. This is what this looked like all the time I was a kid. It's a hard spot. There's a road that comes down into it. There's a campground. There's another fence down here. It's just one of those spots that gets hit a lot. So 98, things are starting to change. Our management's changing a little bit. Things are starting to work, but still not much in the Quakey line, but willows are doing better. 99, again. Okay, 2000 it burnt. Keep this in mind, that Carol talked about riparians being a good buffer. I'm going to show you a riparian area at the end of the thing that looked like they burnt just as bad as this. So, okay, so 2000 it burns. 2 years of rest, here's what it looks like. 2005, we've grazed it a little bit. Or we grazed it this year, not just a little bit, we grazed it this year. 2009, this is right prior to grazing. So here's that creek spot that you saw earlier. This is this year. Again, this is that creek spot. This is back in here would be where that lone tree was standing. So all of this has come to this. And this is happening all over the place. So I'm going to go through these pretty quick. This is Pat Coffin's pictures on certain spots. Certain spots on the ranch. So we'll come back here. So here's the spot. Here's the photo point right here. So 79, 88, 97, 2004, and then 2011. This is the last years that we had these taken. So another spot, 79, 88, 97, and 2011. Same spots. They didn't get the exact angle the same, but they are the same spots. For the BLM did this. This is all BLM pictures, so this isn't any of ours that we're doing. Again, another one. And it just shows the extreme difference that's, and until Pat did, the year before last, Pat put these together for me and gave me a whole book with these. We knew that things, you just know that things are going well and going together, but until you see it in that picture format that he put together, we didn't really realize how well things were going. It was an extremely bright spot for our team. We really celebrated over these figures when Pat got finished with them. So this is the actual monitoring along those sites. So here is in 1979, my handwriting here. P is poor, F is fair. As you can see, most of it was in the poor and fair category in 1979, the creek streams. Okay, here we are in 2011. E is excellent, G is good. So we now are in the excellent and good with just a couple of fairs in all of these spots on all those spots. So, quick thing about our tools. Cowboys, cowgirls. This is my daughter. She runs the cows now. We have a mixed herd. We have horses that run on the range. We have cattle that run on the range. We use electric fencing in places where we can use it. The old saying, this is up in a Goat Creek country, the old saying that sheep and cattle don't mix. I watched these cattle and sheep graze in this area together for about 3 days. I've come to the conclusion that it is cowboys and sheep herders that don't mix. So the sheep herder was on the ridge over here, the cowboy was on the ridge over here, and as long as if they didn't move the animals worked well together. So, sort of how we move the cow. Try to keep the cows in moving through the country in somewhat. It's not like a sheep operation, but it still is. We try to keep the animals the high density, shorter duration grazing. We really work at that on the privates down here in our meadows with our yearlings. The wintertime now, we've quit haying pretty much. We're trying to grow standing feed for, how much time do I have? Okay. We're trying to, for winter feed, we're doing standing forage on our privates. Last year we were able to feed clear through March and only feed the cows with half a feeding. The cattle production has increased on this place tremendously since we started this. The first years it wasn't. It went down for the first years. It was touch and go whether we were going to keep doing this because the production went so far down. But now once the cows figured out, we started figuring it out, and everybody got together with it. It's working. So just electric fence. We've got about 15 miles of this stuff on the place. So I hope someday we can take them all out and we can do it with herders, that we can do it just riding. But right now we're not to that point, and so these are good safety measures to help us manage the animals. So the latest story, and these pictures just took about 3-4 days ago, is the beavers. Carol talked a lot about the beaver population. We have watched that same thing. The beaver population has grown tremendously on the place. And it used to be there was this love-hate relationship between beaver and the rancher that I was familiar with anyway, is that, yes, the beavers dammed up the creeks and made the ponds, but they'd usually wash out in the spring, and the sediment would end up in your meadows. And so a lot of ranchers that I know in our country don't like the beavers. And we felt, since the riparians have been getting better and all of that, we haven't, and we quit fighting. We quit our fight with the beaver quite a while ago. So here is a couple of dams that are, all of these are different dams, but it's stuff that's going on right now. So again, a really healthy riparian, the beavers are tied in. The high water can come and it'll go around or over the dam and it won't wash this dam out. Won't wash that dam out. Here we're getting tremendous amounts of wetland expansion, sedges, and what Carol was talking about. In this case, see, the willow is dying out, and I'll show you some places where the sage is dying out. And things are just changing, but we're creating a tremendous lot of feed. We're creating a lot more cattle feed than we had. So again, just showing this is all sort of one dam complex. Again, this is, okay, so next pitch, let's get out. Okay, again, dam complexes. Here's this long series of dam, and it's in all these willows and the quakies and cottonwoods, and this thing's been in since 08 or so and hasn't washed out. We've got a lot of dams that have been in there a lot of years now, and they're staying because whereas before they would wash out or wash around it, and I'll show you a place where that could happen. But these are stable, and they're just creating some tremendous wetlands on the place. And we're grazing this. This was grazed in September this year. Again, a beaver dam that's in a really good place that won't wash out. You can see we've grazed it. This has definitely been grazed with the cattle. So again, picture of grazing and sagebrush dying out on that. Okay, let's see if I can get just some tremendous wetland expansion. So when the fire in 2000 that swept through all of this country and came across here, this riparian area was very small. It was just the creek. It was like those pictures. This is the creek that a lot of those pictures were taken on. Those early pictures that show in '79 and show just the creek cut and all of that. And that's the way, it was still like that in 2000 in a lot of ways. And most of this burnt. This is all growth from 2000 for the most part. This looks like that burn picture before that I showed you a little while ago, because it didn't have all of this riparian area. The riparian area was pretty thin. A fire, this is resilient now. A fire wouldn't go through this like it did when it came through in 2000. Okay, this is a beaver dam that could wash out. So now you get this one. This is like, well, the beaver dams on our creeks. A lot of our creeks looked like this. They were sort of incised and deep. This beaver dam is across here, and it's tying into this dirt and sage sides, and a big spring runoff comes here, and then it just starts rolling around here, and pretty soon the whole creek's going to go around that beaver dam. And that's what was happening for the most part with the beavers on our place. It just, right here, it would just roll around there, and all of this sediment that this creek would bring down would end up on our meadows. So we were constantly digging the ditches out on the meadowlands and stuff. So just another view of but now, it is starting to heal. There's sedges and things coming in. If it can last a few years without blowing out, this riparian that one is changing. It's changing quite a bit. So again, beaver dam down a little bit lower. This one's to show how the sages start. It's brought the water table up. This is sagebrush. They're like trees. You can go into this area with 500 head of cows and come out the other end with 5 and wonder where they all went to. So, but anyway, the beaver dam, the sedges and things that are coming in, starting to change from willow to sedge in some places. It's just pretty incredible. Okay, so this is the sagebrush. This is right next to it, and it's not real clear. I'm sorry, but this big tall sage is dying. The feet are just too wet. If you look out across that, I would say 50% of the sagebrush is dead now. It's going to turn that whole thing into a wet meadow again, which I'm sure it was at one time. This is the flow we have right now. All of that water that you're looking at, all these pictures were taken less than a week ago. And all that water that's backed up in there is coming with just this flow of water downstream. This is right by the ranch where it's going. So that's the other thing that I've watched from this drought. This drought to the next, from the last drought is the last time the creek would actually dried up to where there wasn't any water rolling down it. The creek, even in these last 3 years of extreme drought, which we're into, it has stopped. It has not stopped. It has continued to run. So anyway, that's it. If it's fast-growing season, if it's in the spring in the spring and early summer when the grasses are growing really fast, the trigger is when the grass gets back up to where they'll rebite it again. We try to do one bite and not two bites on that grass. If it's later in the year where it's dormant, then we just try to we move them when there's we want to have a little bit of adequate stubble and cover, and I do not like to use stubble height as a monitoring, but anyway, we like to keep some stubble so that it helps get the grass restarted in the spring. It's really up to the cowboy. That's the neat thing about this whole thing. We have total flexibility. We can graze year-round if we wanted to. We are in some instances now, and it's up to the person that's out there managing the land as to when they make the moves. Monitoring is one of those things that for some reason, early on in this project, seemed to slip through the cracks. So we'd always say, we got to get the monitoring done, but we never seem to get it. We now hire, since the fire, we actually hire an outside person to do the monitoring so that it's getting done. Of course, the uplands are a lot slower than the riparians. The riparians, because there's water, have rebounded tremendously. Our uplands have an upward trend going with them. Some places that fire burnt really hot, and it took it a long time to start coming back. We had a good enough stand. They didn't reseed it. Well, they reseeded it with sagebrush, but so the native seeds were coming back. But the uplands are all on an upward trend. We definitely saw some things happening like Carroll. When we were really concentrating on the riparians early on, never doing them in hot season, we saw some uplands get hit harder and turn to that rabbit brush and stuff. So that we're working on trending that around. We now realize that we really do have to, the riparians can't be just always grazed at their optimum time. They need to be grazed in the system and be able to be resilient in the system. And as long as you shift it around, it's working, and they are resilient. And they can take a heavy grazing. You just don't want to do it year after year, and you don't want to do it at the same time every year. At the end of the year, when we start discussing our bad spots and things, those things will go in red, and we'll say, okay, we've got to do something totally different next year so that they get a different treatment. So. No, actually, it's our own monitoring. The BLM Forest did baseline, and they came in and read them. They've only read them once since we started the project. We have our baseline. Then at 10 years, they came in and read them, and the trends were up. Now they haven't read them again. But we try to get to our private monitoring sites every third year. Some of them are going to be 5, but we're trying to get to them more often. So This drought, the last 3 years, we had the monitoring last year shows definitely uplands, so it's stagnant in this. There wasn't an upward trending from the year before. This drought has got things leveled off without a doubt, and as far as, improved, well, it's just standing still right now, so.
Sorry,
but
we're out of time. Thank you so much, Agee.